Hello, welcome to RandomOrWoT channel on YouTube. On this channel we will be mostly focusing on SPG gameplay in World of Tanks up to release 9.18. As you probably know, in this release Wargaming has introduced major changes to the SPG class. It should no longer be possible to cause massive damage to a single well-armored unit, mainly due to reduction in alpha and penetration values. However, SPG has received a larger splash radius as well as a new mechanic called stun, which halves the performance of enemy crews, theoretically allowing allies to deal with enemy units easier. SPG in turn receives the credits in terms of assisted damage. What has happened a moment ago is me taking a shot at a lightly armored tank parked in the bushes. I did hit it and all my damage went through, meaning that SPG is still a valid threat to lightly armored vehicles such as light tanks, some tank destroyers as well as some medium tanks. Meanwhile, it seems that enemy team is fairly ignorant to the fact that high-tier SPG is present in the game. Now we can witness how effective SPG is at attacking a group of enemies which are very close together. Thanks to that larger splash, I was able to damage at least 3 of them at the same time. I don't know if there are any hidden units which are not reflected in the counter. Okay, shot is taken and it looks like a good time to relocate while I'm reloading. The flank seems to be failing and I would not like to be anywhere near my base if the enemy would decide to rush it. At the same time, you can see that I'm still receiving some credits for the previous stun effect. And in fact, this is what the SPG gameplay is supposed to be all about. Stunning the enemies and letting the allies to deal the actual damage. However, I'm not yet totally convinced that the idea of stun and the idea of assisted damage works as intended, or even may work as intended. The biggest issue to my mind is that most of the units that get stunned are beyond the range of allied guns, as well as units that were caught in the open with a stun are trying to find hidden spots the moment they get stunned. As a result, in most of my SPG games, I deal much more own damage than I receive assisted damage. Which is a little bit disappointing because the personal mission which I'm trying to do now requires me to deal 3.5 thousand of assisted damage. The most I have been getting so far is somewhere around 2k. And now we will see another part of SPG gameplay in action. In the end of the game, where enemy units often have reduced HP count or low HP count, SPG is very effective at taking out those units thanks to increased splash radius. In fact, SPG could be so good at it that it could really decide the outcome of the game. Here is another unit that fits the profile of having low HP.
Enemy harbor is destroyed.
If you check damage counters, you would be able to see that I have already dealt something like 2.6k of direct damage to the enemy units. At the same time, my assisted damage counters are way below that. And it does sound logical. After all, you cannot really take a shot at an enemy which is engaged in close combat with an allied unit, because the increased splash radius as well as stun would equally affect both allies and enemies. And if you take a shot at an enemy unit which is further away, those units are generally trying not to get exposed to allied fire. As a result, allies don't really have much opportunities to work on enemies that were stunned by you. Not to mention the fact that stun doesn't mean that the enemy unit is helpless. Its performance is decreased, but its gun may still be loaded, and in close combat it would still hit you. If you are paying any attention to the battlefield right now, you would probably notice that I'm aiming at an enemy unit, yet my gun is still being loaded. Of course, when my gun is finally loaded, my allies have already blown him to pieces. And this situation is not new. It happens fairly often to an SPG player, and it is part of a skill of an SPG player to pick his or her targets correctly. But the definition of a correct target for an SPG, to my mind, has changed dramatically with the release 9.18. If before the release pretty much any stationary target would have been a good choice for an SPG to attack. Heavy tanks, medium tanks, light tanks, other SPGs, tank destroyers. To all of them, SPG had a good chance to deliver a massive amount of damage. In fact, tier 9 SPG could have taken out a tier 9 heavy tank in couple of hits. After the release, massive reduction in alpha and penetration values made SPGs quite ineffective in dealing with heavy tanks and heavily armored tank destroyers. Introduction of larger splash radius as well as stun effect also made it more interesting for RT players to hunt down light tanks or medium tanks, with some hope to collect on the assisted damage as well. To sum this up, I would say that with all the new changes, and with the fact that SPG is no longer allowed to be part of a platoon, this class would be much less popular. At the same time, SPG is still a part of the game, and there are still personal missions to be completed for it. For that reason, part of the RandomOrWoT channel will be dedicated to questions of how to select a suitable SPG unit for each player, and which characteristics of SPG should one look at when selecting which technology tree to pursue. As for this particular game, it turned out to be pretty much the best game with an SPG that I had after the release 9.18. In the end of the game I have dealt more than 4.8 thousand of damage to enemy units, as well as collected just a bit under 3,000 of assisted damage or so. Unfortunately, it was not enough to complete personal mission, but this game does show how much randomness is involved in SPG gameplay still. Indeed, if there wouldn't be that light tank nicely parked in the bushes, if my shot wouldn't have penetrated it that well, and if there would not be that crowd of enemy units just a little bit later in the top left corner, then I would have had quite hard time collecting that much damage, both direct and assisted. And it is due to that random factor our channel is called RandomOrWoT. It will be dedicated to SPG gameplay, and if you are interested in this subject and if you like the content, then please subscribe to our channel. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you again. Bye.